In 1937, two schoolmasters from Mussoorie walked beyond the maps, into a land of vanished villages, forbidden passes, and rivers that rose from ice.
It's 2:20 a.m. I'm still buried in the Himalayan Club journals, century-old field notes from the Himalayas. It's like diving deep into the documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s. The journals cover everything, from indigenous wisdom, cultural myths, to epic expeditions and groundbreaking discoveries. These forgotten stories are brought to life by synthetic voices in the Himalayan Journals podcast. Subscribe, zone out, binge, and pass it to a fellow mountain junkie.
In the summer of 1937, two schoolmasters from Mussoorie, J.A.K. Martin and J.T.M. Gibson, set out to cross the great watershed dividing the Bhagirathi and the Alaknanda rivers. Neither man had Himalayan experience, yet they were guided by two of the finest Sherpas of their time, Rinzing and Tenzing, both veterans of Mount Everest. Their goal was simple: to travel up the Bhagirathi Valley to the Gamuk, cross the divide, and descend into Badrinath. What followed was a journey that, while breaking no new ground, carried them far beyond the usual pilgrim paths. They left Mussoorie on the 30th of June, descending toward the Bhagirathi Valley through Dodital, as the monsoon rains made the direct road to Darasu impassable. In the early days, they stayed in rest houses and village dharamsalas, sharing evenings with sadhus and pilgrims. The company was good, but the fleas less so, and soon they preferred the peace of their tents. At Uttarkashi, a quiet settlement of ashrams under the deodars, they learned that their travel permits for the inner line were delayed. Waiting idly was never their habit, so they turned aside to visit Dodital, a small lake at 10,000 feet below Banderpunch, that striking, isolated massif between the Bhagirathi and the Jumna. 2 days of climbing brought them to the lake, and another to a ridge that gave them their first grand view of Banderpunch. The peak stood under 21,000 feet, but its isolation made it seem higher. They descended to the Hanuman Ganga, where the mountain sent down its glacier, and camped among alpine flowers. From there, they climbed to 14,200 feet, pitched their tents on the moraine, and next morning ascended a steep snow gully to the summit ridge. At 17,400 feet, they found a level space wide enough for camp. From the ridge, they could see the route ahead would go, though it would take 2 more days, and with few supplies, they turned back. Returning to the ridge above Dodital, they struck northeast on a little-known path marked as the Bumzor Pass route to Jala. Villages marked on the map were gone, and unmarked passes appeared in their place. For 3 days, they wandered uncertainly until, guided by shepherds, they descended to the Bhagirathi again. They later discovered that they had followed a forgotten route used by James Bailey Fraser in 1815, a route once feared for its thin air and poisoned wind, which villagers believed came from the perfume of mountain flowers. From Harsil, they moved up the valley to Gangotri, past the temple and its quiet hermitages, and then on to the Gamuk, where the Ganges issues from ice. There they dismissed their Mussoorie porters who refused to go farther, and hired men from Harsil and Jala, sturdy Bhotias accustomed to high ground. With supplies for a fortnight, they relayed their loads in double journeys along the Gangotri Glacier, establishing camp after camp toward the head of the Chaturangi Bamak, a tributary glacier named for its 4-colored moraines. Their third camp stood in the heart of the ice, and from there they explored for a way across the watershed. The high pass used by Shipton and Tillman in 1934 looked formidable, but to the north a gentler glacier drew their attention. They climbed it with their Sherpas and 5 Harsel men, leaving behind the weaker porters. After 3 hours on its smooth, snowy surface, they saw an easy snow col leading eastward, their way to the Alaknanda. Just below it lay a small glacier lake that had been marked by Captain Burney 6 years earlier. They roped together, crossed the crevassed ice, and by midday stood atop the col. A short descent led them to the glacier fields beyond, where the peaks of Kamet and Mana rose above the clouds. That afternoon they camped beside the Arwa River. The next evening they reached Gastoli, and soon after the pilgrim town of Badrinath. They had crossed from the Ganges to the Alaknanda, a passage through the heart of the Himalaya. The expedition had enjoyed almost perfect weather. Apart from a few showers in the valleys and drizzles above the Gamuk, the days were clear, and the monsoon seemed to pause for them. They noted that maps were still unreliable, but new surveys promised better. The greater challenge was men. Lowlanders from Mussoorie faltered above 12,000 feet, while the Botillas proved their worth. Permits were another matter, to be obtained in advance from both Terry and British Garhwal authorities. Looking back, Martin wrote that they were never cold, hungry, or truly uncomfortable. Their tents held fast, their meals were hearty, porridge and bacon at breakfast, dal and tinned meat at night, with apricots, rhubarb, and pears gathered along the way. In 7 weeks, they had spent about 700 rupees each. For 2 modest schoolmasters, it was a small price for the privilege of crossing one of the wildest watersheds in the Himalaya, and for the memory of walking from the snout of the Ganges to the shrines of Badrinath beneath the eternal snows.